It must have been about 1943 when I started boxing, and I went to a youth club and someone asked me to spar with them, and I did, and the chap that was running the youth club said, would I box for them? And so I said yes, and I started boxing, and I discovered then there was something I could do. Even though all my family had been professional boxers, my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, I was never encouraged to box. In fact, my father would never give me boxing lessons. He would teach other people, but he wouldn't teach me. But once I started boxing for this amateur club, I had about 3 or 4 fights and won them all. And Dad said, well, if you're really serious about it, I'll come along with you. So I carried on boxing. I entered the Junior ABA Championships that year. And I was in Class A and Class B. And in Class B of that year was Randolph Turpin. Randolph Turpin, Ron Bevington, Joe Root. There were some really good fighters in it, like, you know. And then I reached the finals, and I should have won it, but I boxed bad. I mean, I still believe that the only fights I ever lost were the ones where I didn't box as well as I should have done, that it was my fault. But then you couldn't box as a senior amateur until you were 17. So when I was 17, and you had to win a novices competition, I entered a novices competition at Mile End Baths, and I had to have 4 fights in the one night. And I won 3 of them on points, 3 of them by knockouts and 1 on points. And then I decided that I was more suited to professional boxing, so I turned professional at that age. And I was working in Billingsgate, and as I said before, it was so different in those days. You never earned enough out of boxing to live on it, so you had to have another job as well. And I didn't miss a day's work. I'd box on the night time and be back at work the next morning. And there's a couple of, I boxed up in Newcastle twice and travelled back all night to be at work the next morning. I boxed in Preston and travelled back all night to be at work the next morning. And this is what you did. It was just a natural thing to do. You didn't think you were doing anything special because everybody was doing it and had done it beforehand. I mean, my father and my grandfather had 286 fights as a professional. He got killed in the First World War in 1916. But he never missed a day's work. He was always back in the market the next morning.
Fight and box more, knowing that your father died in the war
really,
and...
No, because you're living on your own name. You don't want to... I wanted to do better than all those. I mean, I'm well pleased. I've got some... the record of the fights at the Mile End Arena. I had 4 fights there and my dad had 3. My dad lost his 3 and I won all 4 of mine by knockout, so you know, it makes you feel something good.
Your dad,
Yeah.
and you would have had the chance to box him, what do you reckon the result would have come out as?
I wanted to be me and my dad boxing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know. Me and my dad used to spar a lot. When we were going to the gym, we always used to argue beforehand. I don't know why, but when we get to the gym, where we was training when I was amateur, he'd say to me, put the gloves on, I'll spar with you. And all the other people in the club used to go run around saying Teddy Lewis and his father are fighting again. Let's all watch. And they all used to come to watch me and Dad fight. And they used to be real fights. But then I started punching a bit heavy and a bit hard for him, I think. And then he would put me in with someone else, usually bigger than me. And so, no, I don't know how it would have been. I was the only one in the family, really, that had the knockout punch. I was lucky to have that. I punched harder than either my father or my uncles or my granddad had, because I won more fights inside the distance than any of them did. And as a featherweight, that was quite good. I mean, I was weighing 9 stone, and that was it.
If you could turn the years back around,
Yeah.
and you could go back to how it used to be in the olden days when you was boxing, do you reckon you would have gave it up, or do you reckon you would have followed it back on?
I wish I'd followed it back on. I wish myself that I'd carried on boxing. Even with the cut eyes, I would have carried on doing it because I loved it. And also, it's good for your ego, isn't it? I was never all that good at anything else. During the war, I had hardly any schooling at all. In fact, I left school at 11 and worked on a farm. So I didn't really have a lot of education, didn't think I was clever or anything I could do much at all. In fact, I didn't have a lot of confidence at all. But once I started boxing, it turned all that round. You suddenly feel you can do something, you're good at something, and this is it, like, you know. And also people start to know you, and people talk to you in the street, and as you were saying before with autographs, you start signing autographs. And as I say, I had those photos printed, and I used to hand them out, autograph them and give them to people, you know. And it makes you feel someone. It's great for your ego.
Can you tell us about that badge?
Well, this badge is the London Ex-Boxers Association. So we have a meeting once a month where we all still get together. I think you came there one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. Well, you saw how many people get there. There's 200 or 300 people get there every Sunday. And we're all good friends. It's one of the nicest places. You never saw anybody arguing there. Nobody pushing to try to get a drink or anything like that. Everybody respects everybody else, and it's great. And I think ex-boxers are the nicest people there are, because I'm one.
Do you reckon the ex-boxers, do you reckon they would have been able to take out the boxers in this generation?
In this generation, yeah. I mean, you hear all old footballers say how much better they were than the new ones and this sort of thing. But we still think that, and I think mainly because you were different sort of people there, and money wasn't involved so much. Yeah, they were different sort of people. When I was boxing, there were different characters in the game. There was some real, I mean, naturally I talk about villains in the boxing game. There's always been villains in the boxing game who are trying to, and once again it's been money. They've all been trying to earn money out of it. And most of those who have been the villains have not been the boxers. It's been the people who are involved with them that are trying to earn money, and they use the boxers, and they have used the boxers over the years.
What's your main body part that you would target for if it's just come on to the first round, coming on to the second?
Mainly, my body punches, and I did use a lot of body punches, will be under the heart or in the solar plexus. They were the two spots you would aim for. You hit them enough under the heart and it wears their legs down. You hit them in the solar plexus and their breath goes, and they find it very hard to breathe for a while. You know?
So would that
I mean,
be
I've done that. I was sparring with Billy Thompson. He was a lightweight champion of Great Britain at the time. And that's the only time I can really think of being really hurt, because he hit me with a punch up the solar plexus. And I didn't think I was ever going to breathe again. I'm going around with a silly grin on my face, trying to make out I wasn't hurt, and I couldn't breathe. But no, they were the body punches I would have used.